Again, I told you I want to transition into the multiplication and division of fractions. And because there's no one calling in, let's do that right now. Let's take a look at the problem. We have 3 1/3 times 1 7/8. All right, 3 1/3 times 1 7/8. And let's go through the process of multiplying fractions. We can rewrite 3 1/3. A way to rewrite 3 1/3 is keep the denominator of 3. And then we can multiply 3 times 3, which is 9. And we add the 1 to that, and you get 10/3. Another way to say 3 1/3 is 10/3. And to that, we can multiply another fraction, which is another way of writing 1 7/9. The denominator is 9. You can multiply 9 times 1, which is 9. Add the 7 and get 16. All right? So now what you have is you have a fraction. You're multiplying two fractions. And I'd like you to notice that there's no opportunity for you to cross cancel because there's no number that can divide into both the 9 and the 10, and then there's no number that you can divide. There's no number you can divide both by into the 3 and the 16. So all you have to do when multiplying fractions is multiply straight across. 10 times 16 is 160, and 3 times 9 is 27. And if you'd like to simplify that, 27 divides into 160 5 times. 5 times. And 27 times 5, 27 times 5, you get 35 carried to 3. You get 13, so that's 135, and then so the remainder would be 25 over 27. Final answer. All right, so multiplying fractions is very simple. It's just a matter of looking to cross cancel first. Always try to cross cancel first, and if you can't cross cancel, you just multiply straight across. You multiply the numerator of the first fraction to the numerator of the second fraction. You multiply the denominator or the bottom number of the first fraction to the denominator or the bottom number of the second fraction. It's very, very, very simple. Let's take a look at another problem, and we'll just proceed with the same technique that we just introduced. All right, so we have 4 3/8 times 1 1/5. All right, so we multiplied here. Let's multiply here. Let's rewrite 4 3/8. The denominator is 8. And to get the numerator, you multiply 8 times 4, which is 32, plus 3, which is 35, times, you have to rewrite 1 1/5 to what we call an improper fraction. Denominator stays the same. 5, you multiply 5 times 1, which is 5. You add the 1 to get 6. And now what you have is you have 35 over 8 times 6 over 5. I'd like you to notice here, this problem is a little bit different in the sense that you can cross cancel. If you don't cross cancel, you're making the problem much more challenging than it has to be. If you don't cross cancel, you're multiplying a big number 35 times a number 6, and you're multiplying 8 times 5, and the numbers get rather large. But if you cross cancel, see, you observe that the number 5 can divide into these numbers. 5 is divided by 5 is 1. 35 divided by 5 is 7. And even here, you can cross cancel here. You end up with the number 2 can divide into each of these numbers. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4, and you end up with 7 times 3. I told you to multiply the numerators across. You end up with 21, and 4 times 1, you end up with 4. Again, with multiplying fractions, you just multiply straight across. When multiplying fractions, I hope you notice, there is no need for a common denominator. That's what we discussed previously. When adding and subtracting, you must have a common denominator. But when multiplying and dividing fractions, you don't need a common denominator. That makes it even more simple than adding and subtracting fractions, actually. So let's take a look at the problem. We end up with 21 over 4, and you can simplify that or make it a mixed number. 21 divides into 4 divides into 21 5 times. That's 20. The remainder would be 1. 5 1/4. Final answer. Final answer. So multiplying fractions is 2 steps. Look to cross cancel. Look to cross cancel. It really simplifies the problem, and in many instances it makes your calculations much easier to make. And also, after you cross cancel, look to multiply straight across. If you have questions on that, you need to call the number 312-738-1060. Chicago, I don't think you're doing a good job calling in. I've got plenty of problems for us to work on, but my goal is to assist you in the problems that you have. If you don't call, we're just going to proceed. We're going to proceed with the problem. Don't forget our announcement. I want as many people to show up this Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. This Saturday at 8:30 in the morning, we've got our admission test. We're looking for some good students. And even if you're a student who you struggle a little bit, but you're willing to work hard, you've got dreams, you're willing to do everything we talked about in the show, you're willing to practice, you're willing to study your timetables, you're willing to never give up. You've got plans, you've got dreams, and you want to go to a good school. You ask your parent, can they send you to take this admission test at Providence St. Mel School at 8:30 this Saturday morning, bright and early, and we'll make sure you're tested, and then you can become a student, as I said, as early as second semester. Okay, no calls. Let's proceed with another problem. This time, we're going to be dividing fractions. This time we're going to be dividing fractions. Dividing fractions is very similar to multiplying, except the only thing you have to do is change your division sign to multiplication and then flip the second fraction. I want to say that one more time. The only thing between dividing fractions and multiplying fractions is when dividing fractions, you're going to change your division sign to multiplication and you're going to flip the second fraction. It's simple. It's so simple you should dominate it. And that's what we're going to do. Let's take a look right now. All right, so what we have is a problem where we've got 5 1/3 divided by 1 7/9. Let's rewrite 5 1/3. Another way to rewrite 5 1/3 is keep the denominator 3. Multiply 5 times 3, which is 15, add the 1, and get 16. There's no difference between 5 1/3 and 16/3. And let's keep the division sign for a moment, and let's rewrite 1 7/9. Keep the denominator 9. 9 times 1 is 9. Add the add the 7, and you get 16/9. There's no difference between 1 7/9 and 16/9. So what I told you to do when dividing fractions, I said it's the same as multiplying fractions, except when dividing fractions, you change the division to multiplication, and then you flip the second fraction. All right, so let's take a look. You keep the first fraction the same, 16/3. You change this division to multiplication. You change the division to multiplication, and you flip the second fraction. Right now, we're dividing by 16 over 9, so you take the reciprocal. It's called the reciprocal. When you flip the fraction like that, it's called the reciprocal. And now what you end up with is 16/3 times, it was division, but the rule is you change it to multiplication, and then you flip the second fraction, and now what I'd like you to notice is we're able to cross cancel. We're able to cross the 3. You can divide both the 3 and the 9 by 3. That becomes a 1. You divide that by 3. That becomes a 3. And the 16 and the 16. Each of those are divisible by 16. So that becomes a 1. That becomes a 1. You end up with 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. The final answer is 3. All right? Final answer is 3.